The bulldog kept standing between the toddler and her snack. They all thought he was being difficult. He was the only one in the room who understood what was in that bowl. Churchill was a 4-year-old English Bulldog, stocky, low, wrinkled, the kind of dog the strangers approached with delight, and that his owner Bernadette Caldwell described as stubborn in the most loving possible way. He had a personality that was specific and unmistakable, deliberate, unhurried, committed to his positions in a way that made correction both necessary and frequently ineffective. He had been in the Caldwell household since before their daughter Pippa arrived, and in Pippa's 2 years of life he had been, in Bernadette's words, surprisingly gentle with her. Not protective, exactly. Just careful. Aware. The snack incident happened on a Sunday afternoon at Bernadette's mother's house. Her mother, Elaine, had put together an afternoon snack plate for Pippa. Crackers and apple slices, and what she thought were plain cheese puffs from the bag in the pantry. She had not read the bag. The cheese puffs were from a shared facility manufacturer that processed tree nuts on the same equipment. They did not contain nuts, but the protein trace from cross-contamination was measurable in the bag at a concentration that Pippa, who had a documented severe tree nut allergy from a reaction at 14 months, could respond to. Churchill had been in the kitchen when Elaine assembled the plate. His nose had moved across the edge of the bag, and then he had followed the plate to the living room and positioned himself beside Pippa's chair. Bernadette noticed him first. She said, "Churchill, not your snack." He didn't move. She moved him physically to the other side of the room. He came back. He sat in front of Pippa's chair, facing the plate, blocking her reach, and when Pippa extended her hand toward the bowl, he gently but firmly stepped sideways to intercept her hand with his body. Her father, Ray, said, "He's begging. He wants the food." He stepped toward Churchill to move him. Churchill looked at him, and then looked at the bowl, and then back at Ray with the particular flatness that bulldogs have that people sometimes mistake for stupidity, and that was not, in this case, stupidity. "He is being rude," Elaine said. She was embarrassed. She reached to pull Churchill back. Churchill sat down directly in front of the bowl with his back to it and faced the room. Ray took Churchill by the collar and walked him to the back hallway and closed the door. Pippa reached for the snack bowl. She took one cheese puff. She put it in her mouth. She chewed it for about 30 seconds, and then she stopped chewing and brought both hands to her throat. Bernadette recognized it. She had been trained to recognize it. She had a laminated card in her wallet and an EpiPen in her bag, and a protocol she had rehearsed with the pediatrician, and she activated all three in the next 90 seconds with the specific focused calm of a person who has prepared for this moment while hoping it never comes. The EpiPen went in. The 911 call was made. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you are in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Pippa's anaphylactic response was caught at the early stage. The EpiPen had been administered fast enough that the throat swelling was managed before it became a breathing emergency. The paramedic on the call, a woman named Tasha Velade, with 9 years in emergency response, assessed Pippa in the driveway and said, "You got epinephrine in quickly. That made a significant difference in what we're looking at right now." At the hospital, Dr. Olamide Salami, pediatric allergist on call, confirmed the trace contamination theory after Bernadette described the manufacturer. She said, "Cross-contamination from shared equipment is not required to be disclosed on the label in all product categories. The protein trace that triggers a severe IgE-mediated response can be present at levels below what's legally reportable. It's a documented gap in labeling requirements that affects thousands of families. Your daughter is fortunate that you had epinephrine on hand, and that you acted as quickly as you did." She also said, "The dog." "Tell me more about that," Bernadette told her. Dr. Salami was quiet for a moment and then said, "Dogs have demonstrated sensitivity to airborne tree nut protein compounds in controlled research settings. The detection threshold in olfactory studies is extremely low. Trace protein at parts per billion or below. If your dog had exposure to the bag in the kitchen, his behavior in the living room is consistent with an allergen alert response." Churchill had not been begging. He had been standing between Pippa and the thing that would hurt her, using the only method available to him. for as long as they let him. Has your dog ever done something you couldn't explain until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. Bernadette picked Churchill up from Elaine's back hallway when they returned from the hospital. He came out without ceremony. He went directly to Pippa, who was in the car seat, and pressed his nose briefly to her arm, and then walked to the car door and waited to be lifted in. On the drive home, Ray said something that Bernadette still thinks about. He said he was doing the same thing at the bowl that he would have done if the bag was on the floor. He was telling us it wasn't safe. He was using his body because he didn't have a voice. She said, he had a voice. We just weren't listening. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. They use an allergen-trained dog consultation service now. Churchill is not formally certified. He doesn't need to be. He already failed the only test that mattered. Failed it completely. And what came out of that failure was a family that now knows exactly what their dog is capable of. And a little girl whose parents carry 2 EpiPens instead of 1. And read every package in every kitchen they walk into. And a bulldog who still, at every snack time, positions himself beside Pippa's chair. Not because anyone asked him to. Because he already knows what the bowl might hold. Tomorrow, a Great Pyrenees who refused to let a toddler go outside, and what was waiting past the garden gate.